previewed. I said that Bant was the deck I expected it to show up in because of the interaction with Ajani and Kiora, because it takes so little time for Kiora to get to its ultimate, and the ultimate is win the game a huge percentage of the time. And Bant Planeswalkers is already a semi-reasonable deck even before the printing of Ajani. I just thought that this deck to me seemed like worth exploring when I saw Ajani Steadfast get previewed.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and catch you up on the board. Canaan took game 1, but we're in game 2. Scott Morton has established a lot of his Planeswalker power on the board. He has a Jace. It's accompanied by Courser of Crufix, Voice of Resurgence, and Sylvan Caryatid. He's been able to take care of Canaan's entire deck, except for this Archangel of Thune that made its first connect here. And Scott's at a low 4 life. So things might be a little difficult, especially since Canaan added a Fleecemane Lion to the board.
Yeah, you wouldn't have anticipated that this would be an Archangel of Thune matchup, but here we are. And it's a good thing that he has it too, because Canaan would not be able to get through on the ground at all against this board.
Yeah. And he draws for turn a copy of Ajani Steadfast. This is one of the newer Planeswalkers we've seen.
Now, Scott can still keep the Archangel reasonably pinned down here with the Jace to some extent, but it's still in some trouble here.
Yeah, well, he can keep it for a turn, right? And then, yeah, he can plus it so it's not lethal next turn. He does have that Ajani in his hand, so look at that here. He can give a creature First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. He can gain some life that way. He could swing for 3 with that Voice and basically suicide it.
There's also this, where you can just minus your Jace and find multiple removal spells.
Right.
The backup plan.
Backup plan for Elspeth, Detention Sphere, and Voice of Resurgence. Pretty powerful. He's gonna get to kill the Archangel. As 2 of the cards kill Archangel. And once the Elspeth goes ahead and takes that one. And what I like about this Elspeth is it's an answer to both creatures. Not only does it kill, well, it just kills them both. And he's gonna minus it. And thanks to the 1/1 counter that Archangel gave Fleecemane Lion, both of them are gonna be taken care of by Elspeth. And this should just about get things for Scott.
Yeah, Canaan is out of cards in hand too, so there's not a lot he's really drawing to. At this point, I guess his out is he can draw Advent of the Worm and then draw Ajani Call of the Pride. So
right, and then
back-to-back
jump it
draws. And I guess it doesn't have to be exactly Advent of the Worm. There's other creatures he could draw as well.
Fleecemane Lion was the draw for the turn. If Scott can't kill it this turn, he could Monstrous the Fleecemane Lion, and then at any point that Ajani Call of the Pride should do the trick. See another Elspeth waiting in the wings for Scott.
I love Ajani Call of the Pride. It's a card that gets slept on, but every time I see these green-white lists or these white-wing lists and they have Ajanis, I'm like, yeah, this guy knows what's going on.
Well, it's kind of like a burn spell, isn't it?
It is kind of like a burn spell.
That would make sense.
But if you're trying to like stabilize your board, Ajani's good. And if you're trying to just kill someone out of nowhere, Ajani's also good.
All right. Jace goes up to 3. Elspeth will probably go up to 2 at some point here. Scott just needs to keep the ground safe so he can start attacking. Looks like he has Advent of the Worm in his hand as well.
I mean, the ground is pretty safe.
Ground's pretty safe.
But he does have to kill quickly. I'm not sure, whether or not something like Ajani is on Scott's radar right now, but if I'm in his seat, that's the only card I care about.
Yeah. There are no counter spells in Scott's deck either, so you can't control the game indefinitely. He does play 3 Sphinx's Revelations, but it's all almost the entire deck's sorcery speed. Outside of the Revs and the 4 Advents, everything's a sorcery.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go ahead and crash with a couple here. Canaan is down to 13. And we'll see what the draw is here. He's gonna go ahead and Monstrous Fleecemane Lion.
Yeah, this is in response to an end of turn Advent here.
All right, so while mana's down, can Scott kill him this turn? Unknown. Otherwise, he does have a turn to draw that Ajani Caller of the Pride. We see 4 mana from Scott is going to be Ajani Steadfast. Looks like he's gonna Anthem his whole Oh, he's going to give his guy lifelink for a strike. And all right, that I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Still gains 5. He goes up to 9, and now that a Johnny draw is not lethal.
Right.
Heads up play by Scott Morton.
Yeah. Identify the enemy here. Don't get too hung up on Anthony and your team or getting some counters on your planeswalkers. Just don't get yourself killed.
Right, you have an Elspeth going. Winning the game shouldn't be the priority. Like, that's in the bag.
Yeah.
We'll see. Depending on that last card, there exist combinations that Canaan could use to win here, but there are not many.
Yeah, I believe Selesnya Charm plus
a Johnny.
Plus a Johnny is still a kill. But yeah, the things are getting grim over here for Canaan. And in fact, I think now the door is closed now that Ajani is able to target the Advent token a second time.
Yep, he's going to gain a life off Course of Krufix with Temple of Plenty. This should do it here. We'll see. He's going to scry the Advent token to the bottom. Advent to the Worm to the bottom. Jace waits there. And Ajani's going to do it again. Worm swings in, gains 6 more. Scott's up to 17. And yeah, I agree. I don't think... Well, let's see. If he end-step flashed a Boon Satyr onto the Ajani, and then untapped, and then Selesnya Charm Ajani'd it, problem solved. Boom.
Yeah. So we can at least still construct hypothetical draws that allow Canaan to win from here.
Yeah. He missed the end-step Boon Satyr, though.
Yeah, that was
right.
He needed that turn. It looks like he's just drawing some lands, and I think a Soldier of Pantheon's in his hand now.
That's, that's almost the same. There's Soldier.
Fires back.
Playing it out here. All right. He passes back. I don't...
And now, yeah, there's another Advent here.
Sure. More 5/5s.
Canaan, though, still focusing on having playing well here. Does remember to trigger the Soldier. Good stuff.
Way more disciplined than I am. If I was a Bent Walker's player, I'd be like, and I'd start throwing creatures.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to watch this happen. All right, Johnny targets the Worm. This has got to be, isn't this just lethal? This is lethal. If you swing the Soldiers, isn't it? It's lethal if you swing all the Soldiers.
Well, again, I mean, you're the control player, right? No
need to win, man.
No need to win. Take your time.
I could just gain life. I mean, the number of outs my opponent has decreases even more if
I would wait until he could go ultimate with all 3 planeswalkers, quite frankly, if I was in his position, because you can never be too sure.
No, once you... Okay, how about this? Once you've calculated that there is no combination of cards the opponent could win, then it is okay to win. You are not compelled to end the game at that point yet,
sure.
But it is acceptable to end the game then. Like, there are no 4 cards in your deck that could be in your hand that kill me.
And Kane only has 1 card in his hand, too. So
okay, there's no... it's like when I have more dissolves than you have cards in hand. That's when I'm allowed to win.
Then I guess I'll start attacking you. I guess.
Unless you're playing green, because then you could have Mistcut or Hydra, so I need things other than dissolve. Right? There are a bunch of conditions to saying it's okay to just win. All right. And Scott does more things. Canaan plays more lands. You can untap, draw.
It might be time.
Do more things.
It might be time to make a move.
Can we anthem our team before we swing? Can we minus that of Johnny Steadfast before we swing? Just
Sure. You can never be too safe.
Right? Then you go to your bag and you start getting out 9 dice and putting them on your tokens 1 at a time. No,
because this way, see, what he's doing this turn is he's pumping with Ajani, but he's plussing it. So next turn, if he needs to ultimate Ajani, it doesn't go anywhere.
Wait, what do you mean? Right. So,
yeah.
so
might as well go to 8. There's no reason to cash in your Ajani.
It's like doing that with Liliana the Veil.
Exactly, same concept.
Yeah.
But Canaan has finally had enough, and it looks like we're going to game 3.
All right.
No rush. I
mean, there's 23 minutes left in the round. That's not gonna. You don't need all that time.
Yeah,
it's
and
fine.
you can never be too safe, as you mentioned.
I'm here to play Magic, not to not play Magic. Right? There's plenty of minutes left in the round, and I intend to use all of them.
Yeah, I kind of feel I was always on the other side of that one. It's like There's people in the room that I want to talk to, things to go watch. Maybe go to the bathroom, go get a cup of coffee.
If you didn't want to play Magic, why did you come to the tournament?
Well, I mean, I
all the time.
I wanted to experience the entire day, part of which involves playing Magic, but that isn't to the exclusion of everything else. And if I'm in Scott's position, I'm probably just having so much fun there, just with a thousand things in play against an opponent with just a fleece main line. You know, what rush am I in? Take my time.
That looks fun. It's a new Planeswalker. I haven't used all its abilities yet. Now's the time, right?
Yeah.
I want to do all these things.
Kick the tires, you know, take it out for a spin.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I wonder what it's like to have one of these emblems or to alt this guy. Let's do it. Let's alt it.
It's a test drive.
You know, if you had green white of Johnny, I'd like gain 100.
Right.
Just like, I haven't done that yet. Yeah. All right, 100. I'm at, 126. All right.
Cool.
Cool.
I guess I'll plus Elspeth. I guess. I need more Jace. I guess.
Hold on, I need more soldier tokens. One sec. I only brought 11 with me or something.
So looking at the sideboard here, and Canaan's got 4 Skylashers, a Mistcutter Hydra, 2 Infliction Courage, 2 Banishing Lights, a Rootborn Defenses, a God's Willing, 2 copies of Archangel Thune, and 2 Banisher Priests.
Well, he's brought in the Archangels. We know that much, and I like that. They're very good at attacking Planeswalkers. They seem strong here. As far as the other cards, there's not too much I like in this matchup.
Well, you can be pretty safe at this, pretty confident at this point, not 100%, that Scott is not playing with Supreme Verdict. You've seen Advent, Sylvan Caryatid, Voice of Resurgence, Corsair Crewfix. You saw Nyx Fleece Ram in that game. A lot of creatures in this list. I think it's reasonable to bring in Banisher Priest. There's not a lot of removal in Scott's deck. And against Advent of the Worm token specifically, it's very good. So even though you wouldn't associate Banisher Priest with being good against control decks, I think Scott's build is creature heavy enough that that card's totally fine to bring in.
Yeah, you could do a lot worse than that card. That's actually an interesting thing to point out. I mean, I think your Banishing Lights are, of course, money in this matchup. They take out Planeswalkers. One of the questions is on Canaan's side, what don't you like in the matchup?
What do I not like? Let's take a look.
And that's not very easy right now. I think Boon Satyr, I'm not a huge fan of.
I do not like the creatures that are easy for Scott to block. So the Soldier Pantheon Experiment 1, Voice of Resurgence type of creatures just aren't doing it for me. Now, Scott's list has all the appearance of like a Bant control deck. So maybe Canaan just says, well, Voice of Resurgence is good against control decks, so I'm going to keep it in here. If you really look at Scott's list, Voice of Resurgence is not good against it. There's not a lot going on here. I mean, his deck's all blockers and detention spheres and planeswalkers and so forth. The only real instant in his deck is Advent of the Worm and Sphinx's Revelation. He can cast those on his own turn just as easily as he can cast them on Canaan. So I think Voice of Resurgence, oddly enough, should be the card to get out of here. That's assuming that Canaan knows exactly what Scott's up to. If he doesn't know the list and just assumes he's some sort of generic-ish Bant control deck, maybe he keeps in the Voices.
Yeah, fair enough.
Voice is not going to be good here, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, if you look at what Scott has, he has Caryatid, he has Corsair Crewfix, he has Voice of Resurgence, he has plenty of ways to deal with it. I mean, you don't have Voice when your opponent has a Sylvan Caryatid in play. That's really bad.
Is Voice of Resurgence good against a single card in Scott's deck?
It's good against Advent of the Worm.
Kind of.
Kind of. Means he has to main phase the 5/5 trample.
Yeah, but a 5/5 trampler is also good against Voice of Resurgence. Imagine Advent of the Worm was just 5 mana, a 5/5 trample creature for 4 mana that you had to cast on your own turn.
Yeah,
that's also good against Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Jace, Architect of Thought, very good against Voice of Resurgence. Elspeth.
Aether Spouts. There's Aether Spouts in Morton's board, and it's good against. It's okay against Aether Spouts.
Yeah, it's okay against that card, yes.
I was going to say good, but then I backed off.
Good's very strong.
Yeah, turn 1, Experiment 1 from Canaan. Scott, Season of Johnny Steadfast off his temple. He's going to go ahead and ship that. And a pretty aggressive start, it looks like, for Canaan. He does have that voice you talk about. Voice into Experiment 1, swings 2, and look like he has a follow-up Smiter next turn as well.
Now, Spider is good against Scott's deck because his blockers are Sylvan Caryatid, Voice of Resurgence, and Corsair Crewfix. So a 4-power attacker is good against what Scott's up to.
All right, Nyx Fleece Ram for Scott Morton. Canaan is on a 6-card hand here, by the way. Ram's going to do some work here, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Looks good. You shear its wool every turn and sell it for life gain.
I don't know if that's the story being told necessarily, but it's nice to imagine that's what's going on.
I want context, man.
Right.
What's happening? Why am I gaining life from having this magical glitter lamb, glitter sheep?
You're snacking on it.
It has Nick's fleece. I'm eating it very slowly.
That's probably not what the story is being told there.
I should be dying then if I did that.
Right.
You know.
It's a -1 counter and you gain 1 health.
Right. Because, you know, we don't, Wall of Roots needs company in terms of cards that give those kind of counters.
Yeah.
I don't think Scott has a... Does he have another land? Yes, he does. It's another scry land. He has Sylvan Caryatid joins Nick's Fleece Ram in the large toughness blockers department. And those guys they are surprisingly effective against Canaan's deck. He does have a Celestia Charm, so I think he's going to get to punch through one of these guys. Luxodon Smiter. He's opting to evolve every turn instead, though. Which actually, like, this attack is only 3 damage.
Yeah. Pretty good blocks here for Scott, getting to put the Ram in front of the Experiment 1 and the Caryatid again in front of Voice of Resurgence. But it's still something. I mean, he's, you know, and then next turn, assuming nothing too bad happens, then he gets to start attacking for a significant amount of damage.
Yeah, it takes 3, but gains 1. Morton should be at 12. I mean, all it takes is another Nick's Fleece Ram, and then, oh boy. We'll see what he can do. Yavimaya Coast in his hand, so he does have the land and the blue mana. He already had enough Caryatid, but I think on this board he'd like to not tap Caryatid if at all possible.
Yeah, it's a pretty good blocker here. I mean, it's not a great blocker. It means that Voice of Resurgence is now not free to check.
He has Advent in his hand. This is one of those situations. You don't want to instant speed the Advent. He's actually going to bypass Advent and go straight for Archangel of Thune.
This is a lot of upside if he gets to untap, because that Ram's going to trigger and then it all falls apart for Canaan. But it's not that big of a board presence this turn, so if Canaan's armed with one of his pump spells, this could be really bad for Scott.
I mean, I believe Canaan has a Selesnya Charm in hand, which is this lethal? Is I guess my first question. Like, he's going to get, whether it's lethal or not, he's going to get the Archangel.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous board here for Scott. There's a lot of power on Canaan's side. So we'll see. All right, Smiter, Fleece Mane Lion, Experiment 1, which is a 4/4, and Voice of Resurgence. Together, that's 13 damage. With his Celestia Charm, it's a potential 15. So Scott's going to, I think, have to block both of them, which means, yeah, Canaan's going to get a chance to kill something with that Celestia Charm. And it's going to be Archangel of Thune. So Voice will trample over for 1. It's going to be 8 total damage. But Scott gains back 3 of it, so it's going to only be 5. Scott will go to 7.
And if he remembers the triggers, the blockers will get a little bit bigger for the next go around.
If he does have to remember it, though, and I do not believe he does. No, he misses that one there, so he's just left with a 0-3 and a 0-5.
Still a pretty effective set of blockers, though, all told. I mean, he is still making some inroads here, and now the Advent is really powerful for Scott because he now, before Canaan's Alpha Strikes were all free, they're all 0-power creatures. Now that he has a 5/5 in play, the Alpha Strikes from Canaan come at a cost. He'll lose something. Even if it's just tokens off of the Experiment 1, it's still something.
Right, he's going to want, he could use another pump spell, I suppose. If he had the Advent of his own, he could make that Experiment 1 a 5/5. There are options, but this Nick's Fleece Ram has been the all-star of the game so far, gaining, I think, 5 life this game or something like that.
Yes, it's done a ton of work. I mean, like, between the life gain and the blocking, how much damage has it saved?
At least 9, I would think. Enough to be the game. To, like, say, to change the result. On the swing here, Canaan's swinging everything. Morton is playing in a way so that even if Canaan has the Celestia Charm, it's still going to be a trade if Canaan wants to get rid of the Worm token, but it's nothing. Scott's going to take 4.
Well, if I'm in Scott's seat there, I'm not buying Celestia Charm anyway, because Canaan could have just gone before combat Celestia Charm, your Worm token, attack with everything.
Yeah.
So that's
You're
not
even
a factor.
respecting it. Scott goes down to 5, then up to 6. Canaan suicided the team and replaced his Fleece Mane Lion. So Scott still has life to work with. If he can get another large blocker on the board, I think he's stable.
Yeah, these alpha strikes for Canaan come at a big cost. Now the big question is, what's the card left over in his hand? If it's just a land, let's say, I think Canaan's in a ton of trouble. It could potentially be a double white spell, and he's got two right now in his deck between Ajani Calder Pride and potentially Banisher Priest, which are high upside draws right now.
All right, Voice of Resurgence is the play here for, Sylvan Caryatid is the play for Scott. Looks like both will hit the table, Caryatid and Voice. So it looks like he's stable, but there is one catch here. Scott doesn't have a way to pull ahead yet.
Yep. No Sphinx's Revelation, no Planeswalker. That's the last piece of all this. And it looks like the last card in Canaan's hand is his copy of Banisher Priest.
Yeah, he has that Drew Advent of the Worm for the turn as well. So team is swung. We'll see how Scott wants to block here.
This is another spot where you're not really playing around anything. You know, if it was Celestia Charm, you would see it used on the token before combat. Also, Canaan had nothing the last turn when he made this attack. So I think Scott is probably going to block, just assuming that Canaan has nothing of significance.
Yeah, great blocks here for Scott. He has effectively neutralized that Advent of the Worm play too. I like how this has been played. The voice token is just going to be good here. I think Scott's more than happy to turn all the voices into voice tokens.
Every turn that he's able to get some breathing space here is another turn where he gets to draw a high impact card. It's also another turn where he gets to trigger his Nixley's Ram. So
yeah,
playing like this is great for Scott. I mean, he doesn't have all the time in the world. He can still get killed out of nowhere by something like Ajani, but the pacing of this game very good for him right now.
Draws planes for the turn.
He may be close to being able to attack soon.
Yeah, he goes up to 7 from the Ram. Well, remember, there's still an Advent of the Worm hiding in Canaan's hand, and when Canaan finds another white source, he does have that Banisher Priest you mentioned. So things are not perfect yet.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting. Last turn, Scott, you know, after Canaan attack, he just played a Fleece main line. He didn't play Advent at the end of the turn. So it's possible Scott doesn't even respect the possibility of Advent right now. He might just say, well, there's probably nothing going on over there. Because last turn, if he had Advent, he would have done that instead of playing the Lion.
Scott is comfortable enough to pain down to 5 life to play that Jace. He pluses the Jace, plays Fleece Main Lion, and passes back. Great line.
Although now Canaan doesn't even want to do this because of the Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah, he should have done it in response to the voice.
Yeah.
I think he's asking where they are here. He did play the Jace first and plus the Jace. So I think the last game action that has occurred is Scott casting Voice. So it's possible that the judge will rule that Canaan can go back and do that. But we will see. It does not look like it. Canaan doesn't want to give him an elemental. So there's that second white source.
Yeah, and now this is just a Johnny or bust, I think. We're kind of entering that phase of the game.
Yeah, we've been here before. Advent of the Worm makes a worm token for Canaan. Experiment 1 goes up to 5 power. But Scott's going to get to untap, and if he wants to, minus this Jace.
Now, the problem with Scott's deck in this kind of spot is his deck is all sorcery speed reaction. I mean, he has blockers, he has detention spheres, he has planeswalkers. He is susceptible to getting killed at instant speed. Normally that doesn't matter very much because he can block, but Ajani Call of the Pride is one of the worst cards for his deck, I think.
A -3 from Jace finds 2 more lands and another Jace. Let's see what Canaan wants to do here. It's either Jace by itself or Temple by itself. It's going to be Jace by itself. We'll see what Scott takes. I'm not convinced he doesn't just take the Temple, but he's going to go for the Jace. He may even minus it this turn. I'm not. Well, he can't. Well, he's going to go down to 3 if he casts it. So
I don't think he's going to. I don't think there's really any rush to cast the other Jace. There's nothing he can really cast and find and cast this turn of any significance. And taking the 2 points off the Yavimaya seemed like not really worth it all told.
Yep. But he's in a safe spot right now. At 5 life, at 5, he did not. He missed the Nyx Fleece Ram trigger for this turn, so he is still at 5.
But he is. This is the kind of the issue here. Scott doesn't feel like he can start attacking anytime in the near future, and he can't really, you know, he doesn't have all day here because there's just this risk of a Johnny coming off and killing him.
And he's going to drop down to 3 to cast another Jace, and he's going to plus it. I guess no reason. I mean, I don't know. I kind of want a minus there. Hard to say. I guess plus is really strong when you have 5/5s and your opponent has 5/5s. Plussing Jace is quite the move.
And now Canaan has drawn a Boon Satyr this turn, which is really interesting because there's an argument for just Alpha Strike and hope Scott screws up. I mean, that's totally within reason here. If he doesn't put
and you can put it on the worm and then kill him?
Yeah, he might. I mean, if he just blocks, imagine, you know, you've just plus this Jace. Imagine you Alpha and Scott just says, all right, I'll put my worm token in front of your worm token. I'll put my 5/5 in front of your 4/5. He dies.
So he dies.
He dies. So I think this is fine too, and he may be able to go for the same play next turn. But I think there's an argument for just saying, I'll throw it all in there, and there's a chance Scott just doesn't block correctly.
That's the only screw up, though, right?
That is the only screw up, yes. Though it's a pretty low risk attack. I mean, almost everything else that Scott has in play is a wall. It's not like he's going to eat things.
Right.
You're just going to bounce off.
Yeah, I do like that. All right, we're going to get a minus off this Jace, though. We see 2 lands and a detention sphere. Sphere's going to be by itself, and it's picked up by Scott. Sphere will probably take care of the elemental.
Yeah, but if I'm in Canaan's seat last turn, I would have a hard time turning down that Alpha Strike. Because I think it's just so likely that Scott just puts Worm in front of Worm.
He doesn't put... Yeah, well, on this next... Right, and even if he does on this next turn, it's... I mean, he almost has to, right? He has to just put Worm on Worm. He can't do something else.
Yeah, but now Scott's found a detention sphere. He can just detention sphere the Worm token away.
All right. Would you detention sphere the Worm token, though? You sure he doesn't want to hit the elemental?
I would get rid of the Trampler. I mean, you know he's got pump spells in his deck. The worst case scenario by leaving the elemental in play is you lose something in combat you weren't anticipating.
Yeah, well, we'll see, because, I mean, having one more creature in that elemental becomes the big guy on the battlefield. We'll see what he chooses. He's choosing Experiment 1.
I guess it's the same logic. You still move the elemental down, but...
Yeah, I think if you're going to pick a 5/5, I'd rather take care of the Trampler.
It also means you don't worry about the detention sphere getting blown up. Not that him getting back a 1/1's a big deal, but it's still another factor.
Yeah, so 4 attackers here for Canaan.
I mean, even I mean, I understand the detention sphere, it tags Scott's Worm as well, but I still think that having a Trampler in play is so risky.
All right, he's on your line this time. Now that Jace has not been plussed, all the creatures are swinging. I would guess they're all coming for Scott, too.
Yep. And 4 attackers versus 4 blockers, it's not even like Scott can afford to put an extra blocker in front of the Worm as insurance, because that means something else gets through, and then Boon Satyr or whatever pump spell you're playing around kills you the same way.
So some body language here if you're watching. I think Canaan is telegraphing a trick a little much, and I don't know if Scott's going to call him on it.
I don't think there's
but at one point he was holding the card like face up, and like it looked like he had it, but it's going to work anyway. Boon Satyr flashes in on the Trampling Worm token, and that will be it. Canaan Punzo 2-1 defeats Scott Morton.
Yeah, if Scott has nothing there, there's no way for him to block to survive Boon Satyr, because he either has to put 2 blockers in front of the Worm that frees up something else, or he just single blocks the Worm and it's a lethal attack.
He's just dead to the Boon Satyr.
Yeah, but that was a very interesting game. I mean, there's a lot going on both sides of the table there, obviously. I think Canaan may have been able to win the game the previous turn based on how I would assume Scott would block, but it's much riskier than the Banisher Priest line that he ended up taking there. And Scott didn't find anything of significance that last turn. And Canaan moves on, as you mentioned, to 5-1.
Yeah, so 5-1.